Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Pemko number 123B. This is a mill finish solid brass, or architectural bronze is what it's really called, but people will call it brass or just bronze. Interlocking offset threshold is what this is. This is what the brass looks like when it is extruded at the mill, meaning it's just raw brass. It's called architectural bronze because it's an amalgamation of I think 4 base materials that will give it the industry name of brass. If someone says they want a solid brass threshold, this is it. If someone says they want one made of bronze, this is it. You know, it's an amalgamation of different materials. This is an interlocking threshold, and we're going to go over that now. Now, admittedly, this threshold is a bit unusual for us to sell, only because I think it's an offset threshold that's really going to help transition between two unusual floor surfaces. We would see a threshold like this literally where there is, most commonly where I'll sell this, is where there has been a change in flooring condition. Last couple of times I sold this, there was an existing door that had a certain sort of flooring condition. That old floor was removed and they added a hardwood floor. The door height was modified to account for the new floor surface, which was a bit thicker, but that stone sill that the door frame sat on didn't change at all. So a threshold like this will allow someone to be able to account for that difference in application. Now this unit specifically is going to be a bit unusual in the sense that you're going to have your door that's going to sit over this area here and then swing in this direction because of the outswing. But nonetheless, this is really that's an application where I'll see that threshold all the time. Okay. You'll have that flooring condition. You'll have a door that swings out. That's also possible. You can have the hook strip, which is included, by the way. You'll get a hook strip that will be included. This is a, let's see which one this is. This included threshold is what is called a B61 from Pemko, a B as in brass, 61, and it's a J hook. We will commonly refer to this as a J hook, and you can see just from looking at the profile why we might call it that. And this sort of hook is intended to be nailed to the bottom of the door and then to mate to the face of the lip part of the threshold, just like this. Now, an interlocking threshold like this is a very elegant way to seal the bottom of that door because it creates an incredibly positive connection between the bottom of the door and the threshold, is what I'm trying to say. Now, there is the common scenario of this sort of threshold, and I'm simply just going to draw it out here quickly, where you will have your door set over the area, and of course this is an exaggerated picture, but just give me a moment, because there's actually a couple of different ways to do this. You could have the hook strip mounted flush to the bottom of the door, as seen here. Okay, that'd be a typical installation, or a very common installation. It's not unusual to see it installed that way either, where you're going to mortise the bottom of the door, and that will allow you to drop the bottom of the door down past the face and giving that inside corner treatment, you know, really an even smarter way via carpentry to give you a seal at the bottom of the door. So you'd be able to close that gap off even further. So, you know, rain is really going to have to make an inside turn to get, you know, moisture is going to have to really make that inside turn to get inside and underneath the threshold. Okay. Obviously, no hard and fast rules of where you're going to use a threshold of this sort of profile, but nonetheless, it's one that you'll end up using to solve a very difficult problem to otherwise solve. There is also a different style hook strip that is used for this type of threshold, and it's an L angle basically. So, you know, not to bore you with another sketch, but you can also install and it would be nailed that way. They do. I mean, the drawing is a bit grotesque in its sketchiness, but the fact of the matter is there's also an L shape that will work as well. Okay, that can be installed. It's really more of a hard L, not curved like that. Why would you want the L shape? Well, you may not want to remove the door, unhang the door, and attach something to the bottom because maybe you can't. Maybe you don't have the additional room to accommodate. And an L shape is something that you can do without unhanging the door. Once you get the threshold applied down to the sill, you can surface mount that L. And it is indeed, of course, surface mounted. You will see the bottom of that L hook strip. Far less common than the J hook, that's to be sure. Now, regardless of which model that you use, you're going to have a very positive seal, as I had mentioned before. Now, let's move on to the dimensional properties of this threshold. You can see, and there is an image below this video showing the important dimensional properties. You can see from that image that this is 5 3/4 wide, that has an overall height of 7/8, which is going to make it very ideal for that 3/4 inch thick material that you may have installed that you're going to need to transition to. Okay. 3/4 inch offset, and the image down below shows an idea of what that's going to look like, with the only scenario that your door obviously has to swing in this direction. So keep that in mind. Generally, an out-swinging exterior door is going to exactly swing in that direction. So whether you've got an in-swing or an out-swing, or whether you've added or removed flooring, this threshold might be perfect to transition between the unusual flooring condition that you have. Because it's moving on to the finishes, because it's made of solid architectural bronze or brass, you can order this in, for sure, 4 different ways, and technically others. This is mill. This is, when you order mill, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to look pitted. It's going to look like it's been used. It's going to look like it's been sitting on a shelf for 100 years. If you're ordering mill, please understand thresholds like this are not returnable. Understand that you're ordering a mill finish product, that it is raw. People will order raw because they simply want the unit to age like a brass or a bronze product will age with exposure to the environment. I've sold this to people who cannot believe we would sell such an ugly thing. The fact of the matter is, it's specifically intended for that sort of application. True, those people who made those statements did not know what the term mill meant whatsoever, and actually wanted one of the actual finishes available on a mill product, which are mills number 1. Satin brass is a 606. That's number 2. That would be that's going to look, that is going to look like satin brass, like a US 4 or a 606 finish satin brass. Number 3 is polished brass, which is 605 or US 3. That will be highly polished with a lacquer applied. Then the 4th common one would be oil-rubbed bronze. That will be a dark oil-rubbed bronze process. And because it's solid architectural bronze, you can technically do other finishes as well. It can be plated. It can be, because it's solid bronze, you can technically do any finish that you want. Now, it would be very unusual to see this in a polished chrome plating, but it is possible to see that. I have seen those out in the world. And because of the base material, you can do any architectural finish to it. You can powder coat it, obviously. So understand that there are different finishes, and they're all available on the site. If this was the genuine article, and this is, of course, just a sample piece, it's literally just a sample piece of this Pemko 123B, there would be a countersink about 4 or 5 inches from the end for the screw, and the screws would be included, and they're going to be, of course, solid. They're going to be brass screws as well. The point of me saying that is, if you have need for a custom length, you can order the next longest piece and cut it down. You might be stuck re-drilling and countersinking that hole, which would give you an unusual dimension from the end, but more so an unusual center to center on those first 2 holes. Or alternatively, you can order the next longest piece or pieces and indicate in the comment field what net length you'd like for us to cut the material back to, and that's how we'll provide it. We'll provide it cut to length. You can see there's a factory cut on that edge. You're going to want, most likely, it sent from the factory to the proper net length as well, because what you're going to end up seeing is, if you had polished brass and you then cut through it, you're going to have an exposed end. The lacquer won't be intact. The finish on the edge of the threshold won't be intact, obviously. So you want to consider that before you order and then figure that you're going to cut it in the field. Most people do. It's just the bottom line. I personally would not want to. So you can proceed accordingly. If you're going to order it mill, you might be able to cut that very cleanly. The factory obviously has a proper saw for cutting all this so that it looks like a factory edge, which is this one end may have been a rough end that they had, but it's a very clean cut that's on there. Okay, you're ordering a very expensive piece of hardware, something that people will buy when they specifically expect it, anticipate it, require it to last a century. It's not uncommon here in Chicago. The front doors of City Hall, the entry doors to the museum campus here where the Shedd Aquarium is and Field Museum, these sorts of openings will have solid bronze thresholds because they last decades. The foot traffic that the threshold has to contend with is astronomical. Another application will be you build a $2 million house for a client, putting in an aluminum gold anodized threshold that is $60 is not in line with the caliber of what is being built and delivered to the client. So in those applications, people order solid architectural bronze. That's what's expected and anticipated. This, again, is an unusual profile. Pemko has a whole host of custom profiles, standard profiles, but that you can apply in perhaps semi-custom applications. There's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can review not only all of the Pemko products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Pemko 123B, mill finish, bronze interlocking threshold, or any other Pemko product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you very much.